So he's chucking mission overboard. Chuck Schumer sure sounds like he's already hedging his bets on far-left Abdul El-Sayed, the candidate he did not back in the primary, telling the Washington Post a path to winning back the Senate clearly goes through Michigan, but we have a whole bunch of different paths. And Schumer's political spidey sense might be tingling for a reason, because every day seems to bring another old El-Sayed clip back from the dead. So here's this interview from May, where the far-left candidate was asked if socialist policies are actually Christian values. Here's what he said.
Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, was considered radical in his time too. And there is a radical nature to being willing to stand forthright in a time of corruption.
And that's not the only controversy following his campaign. An aide of El-Sayed is taking heat for railing against an ad for opponent Mike Rogers. In the spot, the Republican is seen in a classic pickup truck donning American flags. The aide finding that offensive, tweeting, quote, Mike Rogers' campaign has the aesthetics of a 1960s white flight suburb and a KKK cross burning. Do you think that Chuck Schumer is basically like, I'm not spending any money in Michigan for this guy?
Yeah, I mean, I have 3 rules in cable news, Dana. You never compare anything to the Holocaust, 9/11, or slavery. But I'm going to add a new one. Never compare yourself to Jesus. I will agree that Jesus was radical in his time, but a politician nationalizing the healthcare industry does not make him the son of God. I never thought we'd be here when a Muslim politician was invoking Jesus to take away my Jewish doctor, Dr. Siegel. But here we are, Dana. Just because something's radical doesn't mean it's righteous. You know who else was radical? Stalin. But Schumer, it is statistically almost impossible to flip the Senate without Michigan. I could take you through the states, but I don't want to bore you. Trust me, I am right.
Leave that to Hemmer.
But Schumer's getting really bad news. 3 of these big shot Democrat donors in the state of Michigan have flipped and are now doing fundraisers for Rogers. The Jews might be the swing vote in Michigan. They're at 1.4% of the electorate. And Slotkin, the one who ran last time for Senate, only won by 0.4%. So there's like a swing Jewish vote here. They could decide it, but they don't even need that. 8% of Democrats are saying they're voting for Rogers. So even if Abdul wins independence, he's still looking down the barrel. And we have more ammo. I mean, we're just finding out about this guy's sister. She's like a semi-jihadist. He had to disavow her. And the mom, allegedly involved in terror financing. I don't know. I said allegedly, so I'm fine, lawyers. The other thing we just learned, because they're dropping all this heat on him after the primary, obviously, is because this guy said the NFL was racist and filled with toxic masculinity. So there's going to be a drip, drip, drip throughout this whole season. And I don't know how it's going to go, but it will be tight because the guy's young, he lifts, he's got some energy, and, you know, Rogers is going to have to earn it.
A friend of mine allegedly said that that El-Sayed is the perfect combination of a Bernie bro, Hassan Piker, and Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mixed those 2 up, because I'm always mixing these guys up myself. I think it's hilarious that staffer, the young guy, tweeted out the thing about the KKK, because this is the kind of thing, like, I actually believe that when he saw that truck, he thought of the KKK, because there's a bunch of young people out there. They think the only thing that happened between 1940 and 1965 was racism. Like, that's their entire education. So he sees a pickup truck. He's never seen the Beverly Hillbillies. He's never seen the Grapes of Wrath. And he just thinks, oh, that looks like a Klan rally to me. So it's absolutely crazy. And I think he's going to lose. I think they're going to lose all these statewide races. And I think they haven't won a statewide race yet, right? Before we started the show, I went on to Google and I AI'd. I said, have the DSA won a statewide race? And it refused to tell me.
Not yet.
Yeah, they haven't, right, they haven't yet. But he wouldn't even say. Isn't that funny? AI doesn't want to get involved in political questions at all.
Allegedly.
Yeah, right.
Harold Ford Jr., if Michigan is off the table, do the Senate Republicans breathe a little bit easier, even if they're having to spend a lot of money in Ohio and Texas?
So for the leader of the Democrats in the Senate to say that about Michigan, I think it gives a window not only to his thinking, but I think some of the things that Jesse said in his remarks about, in his comments about the swing vote there, and even Tom's points about confusing these people. I mean, Hassan Piker, if you can't distance yourself from Hassan Piker running for the United States Senate with all the things he has said, something's wrong. And I think Mr. El-Sayed's going to have some challenges. Never compare yourself to Jesus. I don't care what your title is. Jesus was radical because he loved so much. He loved so much, he forgave people, he healed people. Institutions of the church didn't want him there because they couldn't understand why on the Sabbath and things he was willing to go beyond the words, their words. I agree with Jesse, the Holocaust and everything else you said, please don't, it bothers me, your politics, but to do that, it bothers me even more. You would think that at a time in which prices are high, the president's building helipads and ballrooms and not people's homes for the American people. You would think at a time in which we should be reducing, if not eliminating all the tariffs to lower prices and to figure out answers to a war, that's what the candidates would be talking about. But comparing ourselves to Jesus and continuing to associate with people whom are not worthy of any U.S. senator being compared to associating with is not the path to victory. It makes it more difficult. We now have to win Ohio, Maine, North Carolina, Alaska, or Iowa if we lose there. And you create a kind of tension and a difficulty for the party that is unnecessary because we are not campaigning the right way and because we're not embracing America in the process.
And
Jesus,
Emily,
I don't even compare myself to Gutfeld.
Emily, Bernie Bros and Bernie Sanders himself strikes again and I imagine that Chuck Schumer just doesn't want to be seeing him in the lunchroom.
And it's so telling that Schumer's not saying, no, it's okay, guys, we can still win, or we can still win without Michigan. He is explaining how they can win without Michigan. So this is not sort of cheerleading to me. This is not championing. This is crisis management. And I think it's fascinating because now they're trying desperately to figure out how, with the candidate that they thought would be sort of the threat to the institution that Schumer represents, right? That's the thing. El-Sayed was explicit about running on a platform against Schumer, about sort of dismantling that power structure with him. Anyway, so the Dems are trying to figure out how are we going to win this state with a candidate that we thought was a threat to our entire party and our institution the whole time. It's very telling. I think they've already given up. And the other thing is no one was listening to them about the math. We know this, and we always talk about this as we get closer to actual election day. It's really just about the math. And it was clear what would happen if El-Sayed won that primary. About that KKK reference and that pictorial image, you guys know I have a cherry red 72 Ford also. And I have been in a million car rallies throughout the entire country. And it is all races and all colors and all ages, all economic backgrounds, all everything. And I think that flippant, ridiculous post by clearly that neophytic, campaign staffer who just learned everything from TikTok, he has no idea how off-putting that is to the moderates and the independents there in Michigan. And I think that will do a lot more to hurt his eventual general campaign than his Medicare speeches and that other stuff. Like, that speaks volumes. And then just the final point is that I think Schumer is obviously facing a reckoning, and there is no way that he will be able to control these people that are winning, albeit not in the statewide races, knowing that their entire identity that people are rallying around is the dismantling of his.
Read John Steinbeck. You're right. I thought Tom was right. John Steinbeck, Grapes of Wrath. That you have no context, no sense of history of American history. I couldn't agree with you more.
Grapes of Wrath. Great on audio.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.